In this section, we're going to use goal seek once again to solve the problem of, so we're going to solve two problems in this. One, we are going to use goal seek and find out what happens if, let's say, the insurance gets called in. So we are looking at life insurance now, and practically we are looking at life insurance here. So what if something happens to the breadwinner of the family now? Practically, the income becomes zero. So there is no income. So this goes off, right? If something were to happen, unfortunately, to the family head at this point of time. What would happen to the expenses? We can take two cases, assuming expenses remain the same, or if expenses also go down by, let's say, 25%. So we could take both of these cases and try and see what kind of insurance is required. Let's try and see that. Let's assume, and we'll put in this insurance amount here in the form of a, just to test, what I'll do is I'll put in an, and because we're not using the loan to, let's actually insert a column here and put in an insurance column here. And for now, we'll put this in as 0, but in our net investments, we are looking at the loan amount. Let's add the insurance amount as well, right? And because we are looking at it only in the first year, that's where the crux of the calculation comes in, right? Now, let's say, unfortunately, something goes wrong and this person is not able to earn anymore for whatever reason. So salary becomes zero right away. If the salary becomes zero right away, everything else goes for a toss, right? So you need an insurance at this point of time to be able to ensure that you don't end with this negative value at the end, right? In fact, it is negative much earlier, but you need enough to take care of the family for the next 48 years or so, right? So what do? We go back to our what if analysis, goal seek. I want to set cell, again the last one, to 0 by changing the value of the insurance cell, correct? Let's try and find this out. And when we calculate this, assuming an 11.89% return, this is the insurance amount needed right away in order to kind of ensure that all goals are subsequently met and taken care of, essentially, right? Everything else kind of falls in place. You have 0 at the end of the tenure. All goals kind of get in terms of the discussion that comes in here, right? So that's broadly the overall contour or details of what kind of insurance is needed. This is the insurance amount that is needed. About 2 crores 75 lakhs of life insurance cover is needed for this person in order to maintain an exactly same lifestyle, right? Now let's take case 2. Case 2 is, let's say, if expenses are actually not as high and expenses are also kind of 75% of what they were earlier, right? So everything else kind of falls down by 75%, by 25%. This number becomes a big positive number. So let's try and convert this to 0 once again. And by changing the insurance cell, let's see what happens. You need about 2.25 crore. You see here 2.23 and 2.25. That is what is needed. We'll list this down here in terms of the first finding, that is insurance cover needed without expenses going down. That's about 2.75 crore, and insurance cover needed with expenses going down by, let's say, at the end of it, 25%. That's about 2.23 crore, right? So that's the solution to the first problem, which is the expenses insurance amount problem. What is the expected required insurance, right? We go back to our initial calculation, which is going to be 12 lakhs. We don't need the insurance to come into the picture, so we remove that out, and rest of the calculations kind of continue as such. This number also does not need to be 75%. This number continues to be the same, and rest of the calculations become exactly the same. We find that it ends with 0 with a 11.89% return. We have solved the problem of insurance. Now that is solved, we now turn our attention towards asset allocation, right? So now let me just copy and paste this entire table from here up to here, right? Now, how do we actually calculate what percentage of the asset class should be into each of these? So these are the returns, and you have to basically assign a sort of an allocation. So let's say we define initially as 50% of the money goes here, 20% goes here, and 30% goes here, right? And how do you find out what is the return? The return can be calculated by a sum product function, returns, comma, allocation. And we find the overall returns with this allocation work out to something like 12.10. Now we need only 11.89, right? We need only 11.89 as the return. So this is what we have to find. This is what we are getting at this point of time in terms of the returns. Now, how do we solve this table? How do we go about solving this puzzle? For this, we will introduce a new tool, that is something known as solver. Now, this is a little bit interesting and complicated as a tool in Excel. It's an add-in that Excel allows you to use, right? So let's see, where do we find solver? Let's again go to data, click on data. If your worksheet has already enabled solver, it should be right at the top corner, top right corner here in analysis. If it is not here at this point of time, you don't see it, you click on file, you click on options. Under options, you click on add-ins. So you click on add-ins. In my case, the enabled add-in already shows solver here. That's an active application. But in case it is not, what do? If you don't see it here, you don't see a solver there, click on manage Excel add-ins, click on go. When you click on go, it opens up the add-ins which are available. If it is not selected, select it, click on OK, and solver will appear on the screen there, right? Now solver, if it appears, click on solver. When you click on solver, it says set objective, right? Set objective. So this is the objective cell. And what is the objective that you're setting? You're setting it to the value of 11.89%. That's what we are setting the objective to. So we are setting this as the objective cell to this. By changing, what will we change? We have to change the allocation cells, right? And then we have to put in some constraints there. So let's change these cells and subject to some constraints. Now, what are these constraints? That allocation to none of these goes above 100, right? So add the first constraint, which is cell reference. This set is less than equal to 1. The value is not more than 100, and we are saying this set is greater than equal to 0. We don't want a negative number as well, and click on OK. So these are the two conditions that come up. One, each one of these has to be less than 100%. Two, each one of these has to be greater than 0. And the third one is that the sum of these, in fact, let's introduce that here. Let's introduce that here. So I will close this and add it up to a sum here. So sum of these three is 100%. Let's click on solver again. We see all the other constraints there. Add another constraint is that this number is at all points of time exactly equal to 1. 1 is the same as 100%. Click on OK and we try and click on solve. When you click on solve, it says solver found a solution. All constraints and conditions are satisfied. Keep solver solution. What is a solver solution? Equities 47%, debt 22%, real estate 31%. That changes the value to exactly 11.89%. Let's say we want to keep the solver solution, and we get our values as this is the allocation that is required in order for us to achieve what is the specific financial planning goal of 11.89% return, such that all the objectives of this particular person are met. That's how we use the solver. We can always use solver with more conditions into it, saying that let's say there are more items which are there, and let's say there is another constraint that I don't want real estate to be more than 10%, right? So I add another constraint saying I don't want real estate, it has to be less than equal to 10%. So we click on OK, that gets added as well, and we try and solve it again, and it gives another solution. You see, again 11.89%, equities go up to 53%, debt goes to 37, real estate gets capped at 10% in terms of the allocation, right? Similarly, you could remodel the allocations and say what kind of allocations can work out. You can say, I don't want any real estate into the portfolio, in which case you go and click on OK, click on solver. Let's say we don't want any real estate. So we add a constraint saying that, in fact, we go back and change this. We change that this needs to be equal to 0. And we click OK and we solve. And we find that the solution comes at a 56% equities and 44% debt value as well. So either of these allocations can give you an idea about what is going to be the data set that is there. We can click on OK, and that is how we use the solver. That's how you try and solve an entire financial planning problem using the tools that Excel gives us.